Hello again, Wetaskiwin, with another part 2 video from Dean Billingsley for council, re-electing Dean because he's currently on council. We're going to move straight into section 2, not question 2, talking about taxes and the economy. Dean, what's your plan for keeping taxes low, or do you plan on keeping them low, or status quo?
Great question. Of course, I want to keep taxes low. Nobody wants to pay more tax than their fair share or what is required. Effective government is key to this, though. And due to the funding issues that the provincial and federal governments are going to have over the next few years, it's going to be even more critical than ever. Finding efficiencies in what happens at City Hall, as well as being able to have as much information to make informed decisions. Members of the community demand services, but services do cost money. So having an efficient and effective City Hall is paramount to be able to keep our taxes in line of where they are. Having said that, I'm still not satisfied, as anybody who knows me knows that taxes are one of the things that I take great interest in, and trying to find the greater efficiencies within City Hall.
Right. So obviously you do a lot of investigation into spending. Do you think our tax money is allocated appropriately, the money that the city council gets, or not city council? Obviously you get paid. That's not what I meant to ask, but I think you know what I meant.
Yeah. Well, Scott, there will always be a difference of opinion on this topic. You try to make the best decision for the community with the best information possible. Cutting services without a solution or without a plan is not the best solution. There's always going to be difference of opinion as well. When you elect 7 different members onto council, we don't elect a king. We don't elect a dictator. It's consensus among council. And I find that working together to come to a solution is really what needs to happen. For the most part, yes, but I still believe that there's some inefficiencies that needs to be addressed.
All right. I know that the businesses provide a bigger percentage of not necessarily tax dollars, but they pay a little more in percentage. They're so important to have as many businesses as we can. We've got quite a few empty buildings and empty lots and things. Do you have, or what do you think we could do to attract more economic development that we're not already doing as council? Do you have any, or not as council, but as the city? What do you think about that?
Economic development is something that I've sat on a previous board on economic development. It's near and dear to my heart as well. How a town or a city can grow is through economic development. I'm not talking population. I'm talking about the average income of the residents of Wetaskiwin. Right now, we are definitely not where we should be or where we could be. Well, 3 years ago, council gave direction to administration to really put emphasis on economic development by changing the direction of that and hiring an economic development officer to find solutions to getting business into our community. Our tax rate for the businesses is at a 2-to-1 over non-residential. Tax rate is about 2-to-1 over residential tax rate. Having said that, our tax rate still is high, which in my opinion means that we're spending too much money based upon the amount of money that we that we spend. So I think that these are things that definitely are going to have to be taken a look at. And like I say, as the provincial government and federal government start to probably pull back on grants to municipalities, that's something we're going to definitely have to take a look at.
You mentioned that 3 years ago, the city hired or put in place an economic development officer. Has it helped at all with filling some of the holes in our business community?
Well, yes. One thing about economic development is that things don't happen overnight, Scott. it's a slow, it's kind of like farming. You've got to plant the seed, you've got to nurture it, you've got to water it, and come the fall time is when you harvest. So if you're expecting something tomorrow, it's probably not going to happen. But if you don't have a plan in place to get to where you want to go, you'll never get there, or at least you'll never know when you get there.
Right. You mentioned earlier about citizens don't like when you cut services to cut taxes. But that said, do you think that there's any services that you would be willing to cut or reduce? And they don't have to be totally get rid of, but it could be having garbage pickup, every 2 weeks instead of one, or different hours at the recycling center, or different hours at City Hall. What do you think for any services we have now that you're willing to reduce?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, any options are on the table. Having said that, the citizens demand services, and what they want is to be able to live in a vibrant, efficient community. As far as what I would say today, we've got to cut this or cut that. As I said earlier, I'm a data guy. Show me the numbers. Show me where we can be more efficient, and then I'll make an informed decision. Just to off the cuff say, well, let's close down the pool because not enough people are using it. Until you know exactly where you're sitting with hard data, poor decisions would be made.
All right. Good. For sure. Let's talk a little bit about lacking services. Do you think Wetaskiwin has any services that we're lacking in, and what would you like to see added?
Well, for the size of our community, I think we are very competitive in our services. Having said that, I certainly am open to explore any ideas that the citizens may have. But all these things cost money. And if you're wanting to keep the tax rate even where it sits, then something else would have to be dropped. Or possibly raise taxes, or possibly reduce them, but then it's cutting services. It all depends on what level of service do the citizens demand? And from there, then decisions have to be made.
Right. Talk a little bit about local business procurement, Dean. I know that council doesn't specifically choose contracts and such, but if council could, what's your opinion on this scenario? If you got 2 quotes for a city project, and one was from a local business and one was from out of town, and the local business was quite a bit higher, which one would you choose and why?
That's come up at council before, and to be honest with you, it's a very difficult situation because obviously we all want to support local. We're friends, we're community members. We see each other at the grocery store, what have you. Having said that, we have been entrusted to be in control of the public's purse. At no point would I want to say, okay, well, great, we'll give it to company A because they're local, even though it's going to cost us an extra $50,000, $100,000. Well, is that the right thing to do? So as long as they are within a reasonable amount, absolutely. Now, what's reasonable? That's not an easy thing to say.
I think we have a provision now. Don't we have a percentage now? What is that?
I believe it's within 5%. Yes,
right.
and that's reasonable. Now, 5% of a $2 million contract is a lot of money.
That's true. I guess you could choose to have the type of thresholds.
Yeah, absolutely, and that could certainly be taken a look at. But yet, no, absolutely supporting local business because those dollars turn within our community. They buy houses, they buy grocery, they buy vehicles, they spend dollars, right? And that's very important for our community's economy. Yeah,
and if a local contractor got a job that they had to bring extra staff in and hire more people, then those people are employed, and then they might move here, and then those people spend money. So it's a win-win, I think. For
absolutely, the dollar they say turns 7 times, so it's very important. Yeah.
There we go. There we are. All right, let's move all along to crime and homelessness. Now, I didn't intend this question to look like I'm associating homeless with crime. For example, I'm not saying that homeless people cause the crime. in hindsight, I shouldn't have put these two topics in one category, but I did, just because I'm not a smart person as some of the other people out there. So we're going to talk a bit about everything. What type of crime, Dean, do you think impacts Wetaskiwin the most, and do you have a plan to deal with that?
Personal crime. Personal crime certainly is the most predominant problem that we have in this community, whether it's theft of a bicycle, whether it is vandalism, whatever have you, but that certainly is the problem. Having said that, am I happy with the progress that is made over the last 4 years in this? And the answer is no, I am not. I mean, we all know, or most of us know, our crime severity index is very high in this community. And that has many reasons for it. Our socioeconomic situation of this community, it's a very difficult and a layered thing that there just isn't a simple solution that we can just say, okay, do this and that solves the problem. Now we are working with the RCMP, and in the last year, we've been able to get 10 new members of the RCMP from the provincial government, which we're grateful for. And hopefully they'll put a plan in place to be able to get us out of the situation that we're in, because, as I said, personal crime is a problem. We have to address this so that everybody feels safe in this community. We all want a safe community to live in.
I've heard that we've hired a few of these extra ones already, but I've also heard that we're short on some normal ones. So where are we sitting right now with I guess percentage-wise of what we should have and what we actually have? Do you know, or I know it's not?
Yeah, I believe that they've filled 6 out of the 10, and I might be slightly wrong on this. 6 out of the 10, like everywhere, trying to find and fill job vacancies is very difficult. And unfortunately, when you're dealing with an organization such as the RCMP, we're not the only place that needs members. And so we try to the RCMP tries to fill these as quickly as they can, because they're short-staffed, they're overworked, their caseloads are crazy. So this is a very difficult place to fill because of the fact they've got to work. This is not just a community where they get just to sit around and wait for the phone call to ring. It's busy.
Yeah. So you think that the additional 10 members is going to have a significant impact on property personal crime then?
I hope so. I don't know. Like I say, I think part of the problem, you can't police yourself out of issues either. Like I said, there's a social economic situation here that, there's no simple solution where you could just say, well, let's find all the bad guys and let's just arrest them and then problem solved. It isn't that simple. And boy, sure, it would be nice if that was the case, but it isn't that simple. Will it help? Yeah, I do believe it will help. Do I think it will eliminate crime in this community? No, I don't think so.
So do you have any other, I mean, I guess if the answer was there, people would have found it already, but.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I mean, it certainly should help, but there's other things other than adding police officers that will help this community out in this property crime, and whether it's property crime or personal crime. And then you talked a little bit about the homeless. There's other solutions that hopefully we can get people off the streets and into a home and start contributing to society.
We'll talk about more about the homeless in a second here, but before we move off the RCMP, what do you think of the level of service we're getting currently? The response time, the management, how the I guess they're being directed in Wetaskiwin. How do you feel about the level of service about the RCMP currently?
Short answer: I'm not very happy. It certainly can be improved with the RCMP. The problem with RCMP, and no disrespect to them because they do good work in our community. We don't have, as a council, total control of how they conduct their operations. We don't have a police commission to decide on how they conduct their business, and which maybe is fine because and I certainly wouldn't want council to do that because we have no expertise in that. As I said earlier, I'm a data guy. If I don't have all the information, how do you make an informed decision? Am I happy about having to call into Red Deer and waiting on hold and when I do see something or have a complaint? No, I don't. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot as a councillor that one can do about that other than demand. Whether or not that would go anywhere really makes probably would make no difference. I know that a lot of people, or some people I should say, in the community think, well, we should have our own police force. And that would be fine. Then from there, you could set up a police commission to set that up. The problem is that we do receive 25% of the funding from the federal government for policing. So we talked about taxes earlier. If you're not satisfied with what you're paying in tax now, well, all of a sudden you're going to add $1 million, which could be a substantial tax increase. So what's that worth? So there's always different things that you got to look at before making decisions. Right.
Let's talk a little bit about panhandling, public intoxication, and nuisance loitering, I guess. What is your feelings on how to reduce those kind of things?
Well, we're not the only community with panhandling. We're not the only community with homeless. Having said that, we have it in our community and we have to deal with it. As I said earlier, you just can't police your way out of some of these situations. Once again, social economics, the homeless population or the panhandling population, they're there not because they want to be there. Some of them have chosen to be there. Some of them have addictions issues. Some of them have no place to go. Some of them do have places to go. As I said earlier, that I sit on the FCSS board. We're taking a look at transitional housing and low-cost housing, because that's part of the problem as well. Is that it's very difficult to find a place to live in Wetaskiwin that's a reasonable amount. The days of $15 an hour being able to afford rent, not very easy. So there are definitely different ways that the community, sorry, I shouldn't say different ways. The community sees a whole lot of this as a big issue, which it is. How do we fix the problem? You're not going to police your way out of it. Now, having said that, if there is crime going on, definitely you want to take care of the problem. But panhandling is going to happen everywhere and does happen everywhere. And it's more of a, generally speaking, panhandling has a whole lot more to do with addiction than anything else.
Right. Okay. You're talking a little bit about homelessness in your responses before too, but let's focus on homelessness a bit. What is your plan to, I know the city has plans in motion to kind of do some warming shelter for this winter and stuff, but what would you like to see, Dean, yourself, as far as homelessness facilities in Wetaskiwin in the short term and the long term?
Well, the first thing that I want to see is this warming shelter. I certainly don't want to see our vulnerable population die. I mean, I don't want to see anyone freeze to death. So having that started would certainly be a first step. But I also don't want to have it turn into a home for anyone. We saw this past year what had happened, and it didn't work. There's got to be other solutions for the homeless population, whether, like I say, whether it's transitional housing for the people who having a tough go in life, for whatever reason. I'm not being judgmental of how they got there, but let's give them avenues and help them, direct them into some of the services that they may require, whether it's medical, whether it's housing, and then from there take them to the next step so that they can become better citizens of our community.
So do you think with the do you think that we should have a facility for the homeless? And the reason I ask is because in the last 3 years, we've had a winter kind of program, and then with the open door, that was designed to be more of a permanent one. But a lot of other smaller communities, they don't have a permanent, shelter per se. The Alberta government's website says if you're homeless, it's best to go to a community that has supports for homeless. So do you think that we ultimately should have our own homeless 24/7 type of facility to house the homeless? And obviously the crime that comes, can it be, is there a way to do this safely so citizens feel safe?
I don't know. And the reason why I don't know is that we have not received all the data yet. We, through FCSS, will be doing a study as to find out exactly what the requirements are in this community. Could we build a hub? Sure. Possibly anyway. But we haven't identified exactly what the community needs are. Do we have 50 people who are homeless and or have addiction needs? Do we have 75? Do we have 350? Do we have 12? I really don't know. So would you go and build a facility without first knowing exactly what your requirements are? So as far as do we need a hub? Would I be against a hub? I don't know, in the sense that we're not quite there yet to be able to make that type of decision as far as the requirements. What I do know, and I certainly don't want to get lost of some of the good work that did happen within the open door and at with the hub. There was some good work there. There were some people that got genuine help. However, what also happened there was not very good neighborly things. We saw the chop shop, the gang activity, a whole lot of bad things that just were not good for our community. Looked awful, and I felt bad for the downtown business people and the people who were downtown. It just was not a good situation. So would I want something like that in our community? Probably not.
All right. So do the needs of, let's talk about the community. So say, for example, Wetaskiwin, how somehow there's some way that you can individually poll individual people and say, would you like Wetaskiwin to have this facility? What's the percentage of people that would need to have it for you or not to have it for you to say, you know what, the people don't want it, the people want it? Like, is there a percentage? Is it 50-50? Is it 80-20? That's kind of a hard question to answer, I understand. But at what point, I know this council that's currently has had a heart to help people, and that's admirable. But at the same time, when you get a petition of 700 signatures in 48 hours, and when you get litigation threats, and you get all kinds of stuff happening from people, is there a time where you just say, listen, I know that the council's trying to do good by placing these services for our citizens, but at the end of the day, our citizens, our zoning just doesn't allow it, and you just kind of you don't give up, but you find another solution for someone, whether it's transportation out of the community to providing to a community, whether it's a warming shelter that you transition people from to an area that they can get help. Like, at what point do you just give up? Or, I guess that's the question. I don't know. It's kind of a tough one.
It is a tough question. But once again, I'll go back to, I don't have enough information to make the call as far as the facility that this community requires. Once I have that data, then from there, something could be brought forward and saying, okay, what we need is this, this, and that. From there, then discussion will be made. This certainly would go back into the community before any large decision such as this would be made, whether it's a night where you propose. From there, if it's overwhelming community. But then from there, then if you've got the data that supports your argument saying, hey, we need this, whatever this is, then like I say, the people that get elected are elected to make decisions, easy decisions and tough decisions. And sometimes the tough decisions have to be made, and that's why one is elected. I'm not a fan of referendum, just because of the fact that that's why you have an election. You've elected 7 people to make decisions for your community.
Right. So you're clearly a data person, which you've mentioned several times, and it's clear that Dean is going to make decisions based on data versus personal feelings. That's kind of what I'm getting out of the whole topic.
Very, very much so. Yes.
All right, we're going to move on, unless you have some other comments you'd like to mention.
I'm good there.
Perfect. Let's talk a little bit about the relationship we have with our neighboring communities, and this could be from Maskwacis, Camrose, Ponoka, Gwyn, Millet, all of the little communities we have. How important, or how do you plan on building better relationships with our local communities?
Well, it's important. Whether, like you say, whether it's the town of Millet, whether it's the county, whether it's the lake, and of course, whether it's Maskwacis. There's certainly we're all in partners together. We have signed what is what is known as the ICFs, which basically is having so that there's revenue sharing of as far as the city facilities that are being used by outside residents, or conversely, if we use the facilities inside other communities, so that it's fair to each of the taxpayers. Working together as far as economics go, it's critical. We're all in on this together. We have, as far as a council, have met with, now COVID obviously has changed things, but we were meeting with the county, the administration and councillors, the town of Millet, right? And as well with the 4 bands as well, whether it was doing smudging and or peace pipe ceremonies. It's very important that we're all neighbors, and we all want to be good neighbors, and where there's chances to bridge friendships, we certainly will.
Great. What about truth and reconciliation initiatives? Would you like to see some additional truth and reconciliation initiatives that the city has?
Yes. Yesterday, we did the Orange Shirt Walk. I think these things are important. We've got to understand the relationship that we have with the 4 bands, and obviously with the things that have happened over the last, for years. There's a lot of bad feelings within the Indigenous population of the things that they've had to go through, and it's very difficult for someone who's not Indigenous to quite understand that. We all want a better life. I want a better life. You want a better life. And the people from Maskwacis want a better life. So how do we help them get to that point? And it's just really important to start to understand their culture so that we can work together towards common goals.
Well, all right, good. All right, we're going to jump right into current council, and this is kind of a loaded question. Not a loaded question, but you're on council, so talking about the decisions that you're getting wrong could be a little interesting. But I'm more interested in kind of when you guys when the council decides something, there could be something that you feel really strongly about that the other council members felt not so strongly about, and it didn't get put through or didn't get agreed upon. Is there anything in your mind that let's talk about the stuff they're getting right first. What are you most happy and proud of the decisions council has made in the last 4 years?
For myself, probably the biggest thing that I am happy with, but not completely satisfied, I guess, is the tax rate. we've had little to no tax increases over the last 4 years. I have fought hard for that. I felt 4 years ago when I ran that was the biggest issue that I saw was our tax rate. Not saying that I'm completely satisfied, but as I said earlier, no one's a dictator. You work with 6 others. There's give and takes in politics because what I believe it should be may not necessarily be the same as the other 6. You definitely have to come together. You argue your point, you discuss, and at the end of the day, majority rules, and you have to go by that. And that's all a guy can do.
Right. And I know that when a decision is made that you may have personal feelings against, it's your job as a counselor to kind of work with the agreement and try to make the best out of the situation. But is there anything that you'd like to talk about a recent decision or a past decision that was made that you go along and you try to find the best possible outcome, but you really in your own personal life believe it was the wrong one to make?
Absolutely. But I'm not going to comment on that. As you said earlier, we have to be one voice. So has there been decisions that I disagreed with? Absolutely. Take a look if there are videos on there of how I voted. Having said that, I will leave it at that, and I will join in our fellow councillors and stand by the decisions that were made by council.
Perfect. Team player is what you're saying.
Have to be.
They have to be. That's good. It's a good quality to have. Dean, what do you think Wetaskiwin's biggest problem or issue is, and how are you going to solve it?
What's our biggest issue? Social economics. Our average income needs to improve. How do you solve that issue? Economic development. You have to get higher paying jobs brought to our community. We need more of the Manlucks. We need more of Supremes. We need more of the AC Dandies. As much as I am thrilled to death that another mom and pop operation opened up, whether it's the strip malls and things like that, those are wonderful. There's some construction jobs and things like that. But long term, the problem with those are most of the employees in there aren't going to be able to afford to buy that new car or a mortgage, right? So, and those are the things that are going to try or would help turn around the economy in this community, which then will be beneficial to everyone.
Great. What about an ultimate vision for Wetaskiwin? Where do you see Wetaskiwin in the next 4 years if Dean Billingsley is continuing as council member?
Well, I would like to see continued focus on economic development. I also, with that would be our tax rate. I still believe that that is going, and I find the two kind of intertwined. If you're looking to recruit business to Wetaskiwin, you have to be competitive by your surrounding communities in your tax rate, as well as being a good promoter of the community. If we're out to lunch on what we are charging for our taxes, businesses won't want to come here. And if they don't come here, then there isn't going to be jobs. And then if there's no jobs, we're going to see our average income drop even lower than what it is. And to me, that's unacceptable.
All right. I have a kind of a fairy tale question for you. If all of a sudden this money fell from the skies, Dean, and you were the one that had to be responsible for choosing to add some services to Wetaskiwin, what is the first thing you think you would like to do if you could start just spending money without consequence? What would you like to see first?
Unrealistic question.
All right.
And the reason why I say that, and I'm going to tell you why it's an unrealistic question. When I ran 4 years ago, I almost felt that was what council was doing. They were spending money, and this goes back, and I'm not blaming the last council before me, but for years, making decisions upon spending money that hasn't even been collected yet. In other words, they were borrowing money. And that's fine when interest rates are low, which they are. But we've also got some big projects that are going to have to be done in the next 10, 15 years. And short term, even shorter than that. If you look at the wastewater treatment plant, that's a $40 million project. Council just received our utilities master plan. $72 million worth of utilities, which you'll never see. Nobody, they're all underground. It's not pretty. It's not a new pool. It's not beautifying Main Street. It's culverts and it's your pipes underneath the ground that you'll never see. What's going to cost $72 million. So these are things that it'd be great to build this, that, and the other thing. But we've got some other expenses that are going to have to be budgeted for. And at least now we know what we're up against. And I'm as much as I was disappointed to hear that we've got this type of bill, at least I know what I'm up against, or at least the city knows what they're up against. You've got to start making plans for these type of things.
Fair enough. All right, a couple more questions. These two weren't on the official sheet, Dean, so if you choose not to answer them, I completely understand, but I've asked everybody else so far, so we're going to ask you as well. The first one is on COVID-19, and I know that Wetaskiwin's vaccination rates are lower per capita than the rest of Alberta, and so and I also know that when COVID first started, City Council instituted a mask bylaw that was over and above provincial regulations to help protect our citizens. So my question is, when it comes to COVID-19, should Council go over and above the provincial guidelines and implement stronger measures for Wetaskiwin because our vaccination rates are so low, or should we just follow the provincial health guidelines, and why, I guess?
The reason that we went above and beyond what the provincial government is, back when that was brought forward, the mask bylaw was brought forward, I'm going to say it was in October of last year. I can't remember the month. It was because the provincial government was very lax and very, they basically dumped it on to the municipalities to make that decision. That's not the case this time. They've locked this down pretty tight, tighter than for some think, and not enough for others. At this point, we did take a look at this, but I don't know if there's much else we can do with having the ability to have the vaccine passport, for lack of a better description, that is provincially mandated for public buildings, things like that. I don't know if there's much else that we could add to. I mean, if anybody's watching, get vaccinated. I'm sick and tired of wearing a mask just as much as anybody, but we now have a solution to the problem. Get vaccinated.
All right. And the final bonus question or bonus category is politics. We just had a federal election. How do you feel about the outcome of the election?
It seemed like a waste of time as far as I'm concerned. I'm not affiliated with any political party. I like to take a look at the issues. And then from there, I just don't follow party lines just because it's the Conservative Party or the Liberal Party or the People's Party. Because not all parties have all the solutions. I've had this conversation before with people at work, is that it's almost, I wish that most of the candidates were independent and then they could actually work together to a solution as opposed to following party lines. But yeah, as far as the election went, complete waste of $400 or $600 million. We're exactly where we were before this all started. And yeah, just a waste of time.
The last question was, which party would you align with? But you've already answered that, so I won't even. I
don't align, and I truly don't. Back in the day, probably 20 years ago, I was a member of the provincial Progressive Conservative Party, but I'm not any longer. And not that I'm now a member of any other party. I am a true independent.
So before we get to say goodbye, Dean, to the Wetaskiwin folks who have been here for this interview, would you like to talk about anything else, any other topics, concerns, or issues? Or are you...
Get vaccinated. That's it.
All right. Good stuff. All right.
And please vote on the 18th. Here's your chance to make a difference in our community. Take the half an hour and go and vote.
Good stuff. All right, Dean, before we say goodbye, tell everybody how they can contact you if they have further questions or concerns.
Absolutely. You can call me. As Scott said earlier, you can go to the city's webpage through Google. And on there is my cell number. You may call me anytime. You can text me anytime. And also there's my email address. I apologize. I'm not social conscious as far as having any social media. But as far as having a telephone, I've always got it by my side and be happy to take the time to talk with anybody.
Perfect. If you do go to Google, type in Wetaskiwin Election, click on the first link. Alternatively, it's the wetaskiwin.ca site where you can click on the election tab and then see all the information there too. I want to thank you so much, Dean, for the opportunity to interview you and learn a little bit more about you and the way that you feel on certain things. So thank you for that.
Hey, Scott, thank you. And thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know this is a lot of work, and I'm going to guess with all the YouTube views, it still isn't going to pay for all the time that you put into this.
No, to make money on YouTube, Dean, you need thousands and thousands of views, and if it's probably 30 cents I'll get for making a video on the council. My intention, I think, was more of I wanted to learn all about you guys, and I figured if I'm going to take the time to talk to you, maybe if I recorded it and then just put it out there, then other people don't have to take time out of their busy days to contact you guys and find out the information that I can ask and share. So that was kind of my motivation.
There you go. Thanks, Scott. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Good night, Wetaskiwin. We'll see you on the next interview. Or if this is the last one you're watching, Dean Billingsley for council, re-elect Dean, and don't forget to vote, like Dean had mentioned. Good night, Wetaskiwin. Goodbye.
Thanks, Scott.
You can wave goodbye to Wetaskiwin too if you like Dean.
Oh.
There you go.